Hey everyone, this is James Wilson with MTB Strength Training Systems and BikeJames.com, and welcome to another Riding for a Lifetime podcast. In this podcast, I'm going to go over cardio training methods that I use as part of my cardio training program and explain why I'm using them and how you can fit them together. So the idea for this podcast came up because a couple weeks ago, I released a podcast on anti-glycolytic training. And this is a new to me training method that I had come across recently and had been using and had really good success with, and felt like, man, this is something I want to share with the other 40 plus MTB riders out there. But after I did it, I realized that, man, if you take a look at my cardio training program today, it looks much different than what I was doing 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So there's been definitely a shift in what I'm doing in order to improve my cardio and endurance, and with both an eye on performance and also on longevity. And so I wanted to share exactly how I'm putting these things together. So again, if you've been following me for a while, there's not going to be anything new here. I've talked about all of these training methods before, but I've never gone over and explained kind of how do they all fit together, and then how can you put them together into a training program for yourself. And so that's what I wanted to do with this podcast here. And so first off, what is cardio training, right? It's important that we are answering the right question so that we know whether what we're coming up with, whether the methods and things that we're coming up with are good or they're not actually, answering our question, right? And so what is cardio? How do you improve it? So cardio comes from the term cardiovascular system. The cardiovascular system is the lungs, the heart, the blood vessels, everything that goes into taking in oxygen and delivering it to working muscles. And so we use the term in a couple different ways. Either, how does it impact your performance on the trail? So for example, like saying, hey, how's your cardio? And if your cardio is not good, you can say, well, my cardio sucks, right? So there we're using the term to refer to how it's actually impacting our performance on the trail. But then we also use it to refer to things that we can do to improve that element and hopefully improve our performance on the trail through it. So saying like, well, I need to do more cardio training, or I've got this new cardio training method that I've been doing. So again, it's, using this term in a couple of different ways. I personally prefer the term endurance to the term cardio. Just being a technicality nerd, your cardiovascular system is a huge part of your endurance, but it's not the total picture. There's other things that go into your ability to create energy at a desired level and sustain it for the required period of time than just the cardiovascular system. And so, but a lot of times when people use the term cardio, they're referring to these other things as well, right? So it kind of gets used interchangeably with endurance, even though technically they're not the same thing. I'll use them both because, again, cardio is a pretty common way for people to refer to stuff. But either way, like I said, your goal is to improve your ability to create energy on the trail without gassing out or needing to stop to catch your breath. And again, this is an important thing to keep in mind because these are two different things. Gassing out is, bonking, hitting the wall, right? You don't have any more oomph left. You got no more energy left in the tank. So like think like at the end of a long, hard ride, or, you're getting towards the last, day or two of a multi-day stage race, or, a riding vacation that you're on. And it's just, you just don't have the energy left to put into, pedaling and riding your bike. So that's gassing out. Now, the other thing that we need to worry about is getting breathless and feeling like we need to stop to catch our breath. And again, this is a different problem, right? Because if you think about it, if you're on like a hard climb, for example, and you get that feeling like, holy crap, I can't catch my breath, I need to slow down or stop and catch my breath. And as soon as you do, you're able to continue to ride at pretty much the same level as you did before you needed to stop. So obviously the energy is still there. It's not an energy problem. Something else is causing that. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing both of those things, both making sure that we've got enough gas in the gas tank, and also that we are not overly sensitive to triggering that, holy crap, I got to stop and catch my breath feeling. And so I think that a lot of cardio training programs out there have a hole in them because they don't address that second issue, that needing to catch your breath and that breathless feeling. And so we definitely want to make sure we're doing that. And so I'll explain kind of what method we use to do that. But like I said, this is a big hole that I see in most cardio training programs out there in general, is they don't really understand what goes into that breathless feeling, and then what you can do to improve your ability to not trigger it as easily. So a big part of your endurance, like I said, is that ability to take in oxygen and to deliver it to working muscles. And another aspect of it is the ability to deal with the metabolic byproducts of high level energy production. So things like carbon dioxide or CO2 and lactic acid, right? Like these are probably two of the better known metabolic byproducts from energy production. But if you're not able to stay on top of that rising levels, right? So either you're working harder than you can keep up with, or you're just not in good shape, and so you're not able to keep up with it, whichever one it is, right? As the levels of these metabolic byproducts rise, then they're going to start causing issues. And so, for example, rising levels of carbon dioxide are what trigger that holy crap, I can't catch my breath, I need to slow down and catch my breath feeling that we were talking about earlier. So you need to be, working on your body's ability to deal with carbon dioxide. Lactic acid correlates to fatigue and muscle failure, the muscle burn, things like that. So again, I know that's not the direct cause. There's other things from lactic acid, but like I said, there's a very tight correlation between rising levels of lactic acid and these other undesirable things happening. So what exactly is causing them is not the point of this podcast. It's more just the idea that as these metabolic byproducts pile up, and the better we're able to deal with them, the longer we're going to be able to push before we run into something that's going to need to make us stop. So both taking in oxygen, delivering it to working muscles, and dealing with byproducts are the things that we want to make sure that we're addressing with our cardio training program. So we also want to make sure that we are improving these things relative to the type of riding that we do the most. And so another thing to consider is that you get very specific results based on what you do. And so you want to look at what kind of riding do you do, and make sure that your cardio training program is set up to address these things relative to that. So for example, if you're a downhill racer and you're doing like a 3 to 5 minute downhill run, and that's your main focus, then that's going to be a much different type of endurance than a cross-country racer, or a weekend warrior who just wants to be able to go out on the weekends and do a 2 to 4 hour ride with their friends and feel good doing it, right? So all of these things are going to require a little bit different specific way of applying these things to address that. And so again, a big problem that people run into is not thinking about that, and they look at a rider that they admire or something, and for example, another example would be it's not as big of a problem as it used to be, but this used to be standard operating procedure back when I started MTB strength training systems, was for mountain bikers to use a road riding training program in the off season. And so again, the thought process went, man, roadies have really good endurance, so if we follow their training program, we're going to have really good cardio and endurance as well. But the problem is that what they're doing is much different than what we're doing on mountain bikes. And so you would have a phenomenon where people would spend their off season putting in all this time and all these miles on a trainer and on a road bike, and then the riding season would hit and they'd get out on the trail and they would have to ride themselves into shape over the first few weeks because they didn't have the specific type of cardio and endurance that they needed for mountain biking. And so even though they'd built a really impressive base of cardio, it wasn't contextually what they needed for the trail. And so there would be this period where they would have to kind of like ride themselves into shape, even though they spent all off season spending countless hours on a trainer or whatever. So again, I think that we've definitely moved in a better direction overall for mountain bikers, but that can still be an issue where you're looking at a group of athletes that you're like, man, they got really good endurance. So if I just follow and do what they're doing, I'll have good endurance in my sport as well. But it doesn't work that way. You got to keep in mind what you're doing and make sure that what you're doing is specific to that. So with all of that in mind, right, now that we kind of have an idea, like what is cardio training, why is it important, what are we trying to accomplish with it, so what are the things that I do? So there's 4 things that I focus on to improve and maintain my mountain bike specific cardio and endurance. So the first one is breathwork drills for breathing efficiency. And I've done a lot of posts and a lot of stuff over the last several years regarding breathing. It's something that I got into. I'd always been into it on some level. At least since I got heavily into kettlebells, because the kettlebell community talks a lot about breathing. But I really took a deep dive into it in like 2001, and just really opened my eyes to how important breathing efficiency is to your performance on the bike and also your longevity. So everything starts with the ability to breathe efficiently. If you're not breathing efficiently, then cardio training is just reinforcing bad breathing habits, which is both inefficient and also potentially unhealthy. So think about, like, an example would be like if you're wanting to train, get stronger in the gym, and you don't have good form on your deadlift and you're using your lower back a little bit. Well, if you don't fix that movement dysfunction and increase your movement efficiency so that you're not doing that, and you just train and you don't fix that first, well, what's going to happen? Well, one, it's inefficient. You're just, reinforcing this less than optimal movement pattern, and you're also eventually going to incur some sort of injury. And so we understand that you don't want to just ignore dysfunctions when it comes to how we move on the in the gym and on the bike, but yet we will ignore our dysfunctions and not seek optimal efficiency when it comes to breathing, which again is really kind of I think backwards in a lot of ways, because efficient breathing is, like I said, it's at the core of what we're looking for. It's going to help you take in oxygen more efficiently, and it's going to help you exhale waste products from that energy, or from energy production, with less effort. A good breath is going to be driven by the diaphragm. And it's going to use a 360-degree expansion into the lower ribs and the lower back. And so when you do this properly, you're pressing down on creating downward pressure into the abdomen, which is where we get the idea of belly breathing. But we don't want it to just be expanding into the belly. We want it to be expanding into the lower ribs and the lower back as well. We want that 360-degree expansion. But when you do this, you're helping to create pressure and stability in the core. And so a lot of low back pain, for example, may not be directly caused by it, but a lot of times you'll find people with low back pain also have some sort of breathing dysfunction, and that when they fix that, it starts to help other things as well, but can definitely make an impact on that low back pain. But your movement quality is going to improve when your breathing quality improves, because your body's going to prioritize breathing over anything else, right? We can go days without food and water, but we can only go a few minutes without breathing and oxygen. And so your body's going to prioritize it. So if you're not using the proper muscles, you're not using your diaphragm properly, and you're using other muscles to drive breathing, then those muscles aren't available for stability and creating movement. And so again, your body's going to prioritize breathing over movement efficiency. And so, one of the studies that I came across when I was taking this deep dive into breathing, their conclusion was that until you normalize your breathing pattern, you're not going to be able to normalize any movement pattern. That breathing dysfunction is always going to result in some sort of movement dysfunction as well. It may be very slight, but it's there. And so if we really want to optimize our movement, then we have to optimize our breathing. So it's not only going to improve your cardio, but it's also going to improve your movement, which is going to help and improve your strength and also your skills on the bike. So again, it's a really, really important. It's like a foundational part of your cardio. And, myself personally, I do some sort of breath work or breathing drill every day. This is what I shoot for, right? I may turn out to be 5 or 6 days a week, but I'm trying to do it every day, and I'm doing it more days than I'm not, for sure. I like to cycle through a few different types. things like box breathing, paced breathing, where you're just assigning like like 4 seconds in and 6 seconds out, and also the Wim Hof style of breathing, which is basically like a hyperventilation with breath holds. And so I've done some podcasts going over this stuff, and so I will include a link in the show notes to some resources for you for the breathing. And so you can take a look at, how do I assess my breathing? What do these assessments mean? What are some things that I can do to help improve my breathing? But the thing with breathing to remember is that you're not learning anything new. You're just rediscovering something that you have forgotten, right? We all started breathing well at some point. Injuries, too much time sitting, whatever it is, something comes along that starts to create breathing dysfunctions, and then we're not conscious of them, and we continue to just reinforce them. And so, it's not rocket science, right? But so it's not, you'll get it figured out. It doesn't take a lot of effort to start to see improvements, but man, it makes a difference. So don't discount it just because it's not, going to require a crap ton of time and effort to fix, right? But you do need to put the time and effort into figuring out what do you need to fix, and then start to work in that direction. So that's the first thing is breathing drills and just being conscious of my breathing efficiency. The the next thing is CO2 or carbon dioxide tolerance training. So I mentioned this already, that one of the metabolic byproducts of using oxygen to create energy is carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide does several things in the body. And so one, it does trigger that panicky, holy crap, I can't catch my breath feeling. That has to be one of the worst feelings on the trail, right? Like you're thinking, like, I've had times where I'm like, this is it, I'm gonna die. Like my heart rate is not gonna slow down. I can't catch my breath. Obviously it always recovers, but you hate triggering that feeling. But the problem is carbon dioxide also has positive benefits. And so one of the biggest positive benefits or things that it does is it helps to release oxygen from red blood cells. So it's kind of the key that unlocks oxygen from the red blood cells and allows that oxygen to get into working muscles. And so you don't want to just get rid of as much CO2 as possible. That like you would have that wouldn't be as helpful as what you want, because without the carbon dioxide present, you would have trouble offloading oxygen and getting into the working muscles. And so what you want to do is improve your ability to tolerate CO2, because the higher levels of CO2 that you can tolerate, the harder you can push before you're going to trigger that panicky feeling. And also the more CO2 that you can tolerate, the more of it that you'll have around, or available to unlock oxygen to get more of it into working muscles. And so to do this, you have to put yourself into a very specific internal environment. You want to have a low oxygen, high carbon dioxide environment. And when your body is in that environment, it triggers changes in it. There's several benefits that you get from doing this workout that I'm going to explain and triggering this internal environment. But again, one of the main ones, at least for our purposes, is it improves our CO2 tolerance, because you're getting exposed to those high levels of CO2. And again, just like anything else, as you get exposed to higher levels of it, your body starts to develop a tolerance for it. And so that's how you raise your CO2 tolerance. So the way that you do this is through breath holds. And again, I've done podcasts talking about CO2 tolerance training, and why holding your breath is a key to riding faster. And so again, I'll include some links to that. But in a nutshell, you're looking to do 5 strong breath holds and that's going to trigger what we're looking for, right? So to do this, you take like a good deep inhale in, and then you let out a relaxed exhale. And a relaxed exhale is like 80%, right? You have like a relaxed exhale, right? And then you've got a forced exhale where you're like trying to push out all the oxygen you can. So you just relaxed exhale to that point where you feel like I would have to start pushing out in order, putting in effort in order to get more air out of my lungs. So again, it's about like 80% exhale is the number that I put on it. So once you've taken that relaxed exhale, you're going to hold on the exhale, and then you're going to start to run. You can either run in place, which is what I usually do, or if you have the space, you can start to actually run, right? You can run in a circle or back and forth or just straight, whatever. But you want to start slowly and then pick up the pace and get to where you're at like a high pace for it. And you're going to do that while holding your breath on the exhale until you feel a strong air hunger, or that's the term that they give to that feeling of I need to breathe, right? So once you trigger that, holy crap, I need to take a breath feeling, then you want to stop and start breathing through your nose to recover. Now, breathing through your nose does a couple things. One, it's going to just prolong that exposure to that low oxygen, high CO2 environment, because you won't recover as quickly as you would if you just started breathing in and out through your mouth, which gets more oxygen in faster, and so you would recover faster that way. But we want to expose our body to this internal environment for as long as possible, and so breathing through your nose kind of prolongs that a little bit, and then it also acts as a kind of an intensity guide, right? And so if you finish, if you get done and you start breathing and you have to start gasping through your mouth, then you went too hard, right? Like all we need to do is get our oxygen saturation level down to 85%. If it goes lower than that, great, but you don't have to be driving yourself into like deep oxygen hunger or air hunger in order to trigger that. And so you just want to go to like a strong air hunger, and then you should be able to recover by breathing through your nose. And again, if you can't, then you just went too hard. Just try to dial it back a little bit until you can. And then you're going to let your O2 saturation levels recover back up to like 95 to 99%, which is what normal is. Then you repeat that process until you've done 5 strong breath holds that way. And so to do this, the best way to do it is to get an O2 meter, an oxygen saturation meter, which is just one of those things you put on the tip of your finger. If you've been to the doctor, that's what they do to get your pulse and oxygen saturation levels. You can get them from a drugstore online, pretty cheap. But it's good to use one of those, because then you know for sure whether you're driving yourself into that oxygen, that low oxygen situation that you're looking for. And so that's pretty much it, right? Just 5 strong breath holds. If you don't have the O2 meter, and so you're not able to watch your oxygen saturation levels to see when you recover back up, give yourself about a minute. That should be plenty. Your oxygen levels will recover by that point. So just go until you feel a strong air hunger. Breathe through your nose, recover for a minute, and then repeat that process. And so again, you're looking to do this 5 times total. So that's your CO2 tolerance training. The next thing, the third thing, is the anti-glycolytic training. And again, I did a whole podcast on this, so I'll include the link to that to go through it in more detail. But the goal of the anti-glycolytic training is to avoid using the glycolytic energy system too much. The glycolytic energy system is the one that uses glucose and glycogen for energy, and it produces lactic acid as one of the metabolic byproducts. And so it's not a very efficient, it's kind of a quick and dirty way to create energy. But then your body has to deal with the metabolic byproducts of that, right? And again, lactic acid being a primary one. And so a good way to accomplish this is to strengthen the other 2 energy systems. So basically you have your alactic energy system, which is like 10 seconds of all-out effort. Then you've got your glycolytic energy system, which is like after that 10 seconds, so 15 to 20 seconds of effort, up to about 2 minutes is about all you can, about kind of the higher end of what you can power with the glycolytic energy system. And then if you go past that, the aerobic energy system starts to take over and provide most of the energy. So again, all the energy systems are always contributing on some level. We're just talking about which one is the dominant energy system for that effort. And so a lot of cardio training today focuses on intervals, and intervals are all about using that glycolytic energy system and trying to train your body to be able to work with it and strengthen it, and to to be able to tolerate higher levels of lactic acid, just like the CO2 tolerance training, right? We're trying to introduce the body to high levels of carbon dioxide to improve its tolerance. A big part of interval training is to introduce the body to high levels of lactic acid in order to improve its ability to deal with that. But there are some drawbacks to that. The Like I said, I go over in detail in the anti-glycolytic podcast about what those are. But in general, the intervals can be extremely helpful, but they are optimally used for short periods of time. So like 6 to 8 weeks is where you're going to get the most results from interval training. There are some drawbacks to just that high acid environment that gets created by them. From a longevity standpoint, that's not necessarily the best for mitochondrial health and density, which is an important part of our longevity as we get older, is supporting mitochondrial health. And they're just hard on the body, right? And so I've talked about before how like I had to stop doing intervals as I got older, just because they are hard on the body and they're hard to recover from. And so if you can find a way to not rely on that glycolytic energy system as much, then and use your alactic and then your aerobic energy system as much as possible, then it's going to help both from a fatigue management and endurance point, a health point. There's so many benefits that you're going to get from that. And so there's a lot of different ways to accomplish this, but in general, what you want to do is do an explosive exercise for around 10 seconds, which is going to target that alactic energy system. And then you want to rest for around 50 to 60 seconds. And that's going to allow that alactic energy system to recover, not 100%, but the majority, right? Like you're going to recover most of what you're going to get in that first minute. And then you can repeat that process for 20 to 40 minutes. So you want to avoid fatigue. You want to avoid the burn. If you start to get the burn in the muscles, that's a sure sign that you're producing lactic acid. And so we're not targeting the energy system that we want. Muscle congestion, where things are just feeling tight. Speed, if you start to slow down. So for example, if it's taking you, 10 seconds to do 5 reps with a kettlebell swing, and all of a sudden it's taking you like 12 seconds or more, and you can't get it going back down to 10, then you should stop, because again, we're not preferentially recruiting the muscle fibers and using the energy system that we're looking for. And so, all of these things you want to try to avoid with this workout. An easy way to do this is to do 5 kettlebell swings every minute on the minute. So that means you set a timer for a minute. You start the timer, you do 5 swings, you park the kettlebell, and then you rest for the rest of that minute. And then when the next minute starts, you do 5 swings, park the kettlebell, you rest for the rest of that minute. So you end up doing about 10 seconds of work with about 50 seconds of rest. And you repeat that process for 20 to 40 minutes, right? So I like to start with 20 minutes and then add 2 minutes each week. Personally, I just build up to 30 minutes, and then, I will drop back down to 20 and increase the weight or increase the reps or something like that. But again, we want to stay somewhere in like the 4 to 6 rep range with kettlebell swings is a good sweet spot. You can use two-handed swings, or you can use pass-off or, hand-to-hand swings with this. But another thing that you can do is to moderate your volume, or to vary your volume throughout the week. So you would have, you'd want to do this workout like 2 to 3 times a week. You would do one with your high number of sets, right? So if we're doing 20, then 20 would be your number. Then the next day you would do a medium, which is going to be 80% of that number. So I think it's like 16 sets. And then you're going to have a low day, which is something, like 12 sets. And so you would have a high, medium, and low day throughout the week in order to vary the volume, which just kind of helps keep you fresh and helps, helps with fatigue management. So if you can't do this workout as a standalone workout, something that you can do is to add it to your regular workout. So doing 10 rounds as part of your regular workout. So either, at the end of it or somewhere in the middle, do 10 rounds of these every minute on the minute swings. And so that'd be a good way to just make sure that you have this in the workout in some way, even though optimally you would be doing this as a standalone workout and doing like 20 to 30 or more minutes. And again, this is one of those things where the context matters. Like the more of a cross country, like long endurance type rider you are, then the more I would say you'd probably want to look at building up to 40 to, I mean, you can take this up to 60 minutes, right? So the more of a on the shorter side, or just kind of like an average trail rider, then I'd say like 20 to 30 minutes would be fine. But again, this is one of those areas where you could modify that variable, like how many rounds you're building up to, based on what your context is and what you're trying to accomplish there. So that's the anti-glycolytic training. And then finally, you have zone 2 cardio, which is basically your aerobic base training of the past. And to do this, you're wanting to get your heart rate into, this is based on like a 5-zone heart rate zone thing. They call it zone 2, which is like right below your anaerobic threshold. Your anaerobic threshold is corresponds with your ventilatory threshold, which is that place where you start to pant, right? So if you can say your name and address or repeat the Pledge of Allegiance, and you're not having to take like a deep breath between sentences, then you are below that ventilatory threshold. As you get over that, you get to the point where you are having to gasp and you are having to take deep breaths between sentences, then that's a sign that you have gone over that anaerobic threshold and you are into that glycolytic energy system, and you're producing lactic acid and using glycogen for energy. And so what we're really trying to do is like work on the upper end of the aerobic energy system. Like, how hard can we push the aerobic energy system before we start to dip into that glycolytic energy system more? Because again, the stronger that aerobic energy system is, the more, the higher level effort you can power with it, then the less you're going to be dipping into that glycolytic energy system. And so, again, so you're looking to get into that heart rate zone, which for me is somewhere around like 135, 140 beats per minute. So again, you can be in that range. It doesn't have to be exactly, 135 to 140. And if you get out of that 5-beat range, then like you're not getting any benefits. It's not how it works. But you're again, like for me personally, that's where I find there's different ways to find that out based on your max heart rate or, zones. Personally, I like to use the Morpheus HRV recovery app, and it also will automatically assign training heart rate zones for you based on your recovery that day. So that's what I personally use. But you're looking to use that because it does strengthen the heart in a unique way, and it also helps to build mitochondrial density and efficiency. So again, going back to that idea of, as part of longevity, we want to be supporting mitochondrial health, density, efficiency. And so the zone 2 cardio definitely helps with that. So, you do need to watch the volume, right? It's just one of those things where like more is not always better. I touched on this earlier, like spending a lot of time in zone 2 for a road rider makes sense. Spending as much time as a mountain biker doesn't make as much sense, but you definitely need to do some. You need to do some to get the health benefits and the performance benefits from it. So, the more you're riding your bike, the less of this you're going to need to do as a standalone workout. But in general, you're looking to get 2 to 3 hours a week in this zone 2 between riding and training. But just keep in mind that zone 2 efforts on the trail are just that, right? If you're pushing into the gasping and the panting, then you're getting out of that zone 2. So for a lot of us, it's hard to stay in that zone 2 for our rides. And so just keep that in mind, that just because you're riding a lot, you may not be spending a lot of time in that zone 2. And so you may not need to do some standalone workouts if you're trying to optimize everything based on that. So, for me personally, I do 2 to 3 sessions a week of about 20 to 30 minutes each, and this supplements my riding and other training that I do. So what does all this look like, right? So now I've thrown a lot of info at you guys. We've got our breath work, for breathing efficiency. We've got our CO2 tolerance training. We've got our anti-glycolytic training, and we've got our zone 2 cardio. So how do we put this together throughout the week? So I do daily breathing, breath work drills. I think I mentioned this already. And so, you should be trying to get at least like 5 days a week of that in. It doesn't take a lot of time. Doesn't take any energy. You get mindfulness benefits. There's just so many benefits from doing this that it definitely should be part of your program. It doesn't require a lot of time, right? Like 10 to 15 minutes when you're doing it is all you need. So with the CO2 tolerance training, I try to get 3 to 5 of these workouts in a week. And so they're very short. They take like 10 minutes to complete, and they're not very taxing on the body at all. And so you can easily do several of them throughout the week, and you don't need to do them every day, but the more you do it, the better, the faster and the better benefits that you'll get. So if you can get 5 times a weekend, then that would be great. My anti-glycolytic training, I do that 2 to 3 times a week. And then my zone 2 cardio, like I mentioned, I do 1 to 3 times a week. So my anti-glycolytic training, the swing workouts that I do, I alternate that with strength training throughout the week. So Mondays, anti-glycolytic training, Tuesdays, strength training, Wednesdays, anti-glycolytic training, Thursdays, strength training, Fridays, anti-glycolytic training, right? So just alternating that throughout the week. The CO2 tolerance training workouts, I do them at the end of my other workouts. So at the end of the anti-glycolytic training or the strength training workout, I will do my CO2 tolerance training. So that's how I get those in 5 days a week, because I'm doing 3 anti-glycolytic, 2 strength training. That's 5 days a week. After that, I do my CO2 tolerance training. So I'm getting all that in right there. The zone 2 cardio, I fit in where I can. I definitely like to get an easy ride in on Sunday. Again, I do it on my Airdyne bike in the garage, just, put on a podcast and do 20 to 30 minutes there. And then I'll try and find some time throughout the week. But you can also find doing like 10 minutes of a warm up before a workout and 10 minutes of a cool down after a workout. That can also count as zone 2 training, right? So that's 20 minutes right there. So anyways, there's ways that you can fit that in throughout the week, but you'll notice that this program is pretty simple, right? We're not using power meters. They're not long, complicated workouts taking you through different training zones. We're also not using intervals. Again, I mentioned that they can be effective for short periods of time, but they have some impacts on the body that can be counterproductive for longevity, and they shouldn't be used as a long-term training method. So I would say if you're not riding your bike, or you're not doing anything that gets you into that glycolytic energy system, then you'd probably want to work some of that stuff into your workout more often. But for mountain bikers, that's usually not a problem. We're usually getting plenty of, glycolytic work on our rides. And so anyway, so it's a reason that I don't use intervals and stuff in the training program. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I know there's a lot of info here, so any questions or anything that you might have is, figuring out the best way to implement this into your own training program, let me know. I'm always happy to help. This workout program also lines up nicely with our goals for improved longevity, which is, again, a big part of the Riding for a Lifetime philosophy, is not just improving our performance today, but also helping us be able to set ourselves up to be able to ride at a relatively high level and enjoy life as we get older, and not have to quit riding because of age, but be able to do this for a lifetime. And again, I feel like this approach is a really good one for that, because it is relatively easy on the body, and it's setting you up to optimize mitochondrial health and density and efficiency and things like that. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. Those are the 4 things that I'm using as part of my cardio training program. Again, if you got any questions on that, let me know. If you want to help support the podcast, the easiest thing to do is to make sure that you're signed up to this newsletter. You can do that at bikejames.com. While you're there, you can check out my training programs. I got the 40 plus MTB rider training program. the kettlebell training program, the ultimate MTB workout. And so you can check those out. And you can also go to pedalinginnovations.com and check out the Catalyst pedal, which is the flat pedal that I designed to optimize the midfoot position and just really unlock your lower body's ability to move efficiently and move well on the bike. Takes a lot of stress off of the ankle and knees and low back and plantar fascia, and there's just so many things that proper foot support do for you. And so this pedal allows you to do that. So make sure that you check those out. So that's going to do it for today's podcast. If you guys have any questions, like I said, hit me up at james@bikejames.com. Otherwise, I'll talk to everybody next time.